following summer with my Aunt Teresa and Uncle Ted, a skilled roofer who sometimes took me with him to work. This was a new experience. I'd never seen where my father worked because he was rarely ever working. Ted would rouse me off the living room sofa before dawn, and we'd drive to one of the houses he was building or fixing. I'd fetch and carry things he could easily have fetched and carried himself, but it gave us something to do together, and at the end of the day I felt I'd actually accomplished something. He was trying to instill in me the same work ethic that he and his brother Frank had honed to a fine art. One afternoon, he had me on ladder duty to hand up tools and other supplies. When some of the shingles proved difficult to remove, he asked me to come up and give him a hand. I zipped up the ladder, stepped onto the roof. It was the first time that I'd been on a roof since my mother tried to hurl me off one just a few years earlier. And when I made the mistake of looking over the edge, that moment came back with the force of a physical blow. Once again, I felt myself being picked up, then falling. The roof tilted beneath me. Look at the birds. Ted saw me starting to fall and grabbed my arm, dragging me to the middle of the roof. I sat shaking for several minutes, unable to talk. My eyes were open, but the world had vanished. All I could see was that moment playing over and over in my head. Ted held on to me until my brain returned from wherever it had retreated. "Are you okay?" I nodded. "What happened?" I didn't know how to tell him about the incident with my mother, so I told him I got dizzy for a second. I don't think he entirely believed me, but he let it go and started leading me towards the ladder. I pulled away, determined to continue the task that had brought me up there in the first place. On some level, I knew that if I didn't finish what I started, I would always be trapped by the fear of that memory. He let me stay, but kept close watch the whole time. I was okay as long as I kept away from the edge and didn't look down. When we were done, he offered to help me down the ladder, but I declined and made it on my own. Later, as we drove back to Ted's house, where my father was to pick me up, he said I'd done a good day's work and deserved a good day's pay, then handed me a $5 bill. It was more money than I'd ever seen, enough to buy 40 comic books and have enough left over for a candy bar. I'd never been as excited about anything as I was for that $5 bill. Best of all, it wasn't a gift. It wasn't charity. There were no strings attached. I'd earned it. I'd worked, and I'd been paid, and the money was clean. This is incredible, I thought. I can do this again next time and get another $5. Holy smokes, does the rest of the world know about this? When my father arrived, I showed him the $5, expecting him to be proud of my accomplishment. Instead, he became furious, yelling at Ted, demanding to know what the hell he was thinking. He said I shouldn't expect to be paid for doing things for the family, even if it constituted actual work. The real problem was that he didn't want to worry about paying me if he started putting me to work, as would eventually happen. At my father's insistence, I handed Ted back the money. Then we got in the car and headed home. I refused to cry or show that I was upset. I'd learned never to show my emotions to anyone, especially my father, who always found some way to turn them against me. That was his pattern, one of many I started to understand. If dinner wasn't ready when he got home, he beat my mother for her laziness, creating an excuse to go out drinking. If dinner was ready, he'd announce that it wasn't to his liking and smash the plates of food against the wall, then blame her for the mess, threatening that if it wasn't cleaned up by the time he got back, there would be more of the same. If my mother complained or looked like she might complain, he'd punch her. I don't mean he'd slap, backhand, or shove her. He would punch her, repeatedly, and at full strength, in the face, head, shoulders, chest, and back, driving her to the floor and then kicking her. If there was anything at hand that he could use as a weapon,